was a smash and grab. I think there's a little bit of stupidity in doing it at the Louvre. I mean, look, if they're going out and hit a Harry Winston jewelry store, nobody care. You see what I'm saying? Much easier, a lot of interesting, good stuff that you could get, that you could sell Rolex watches, diamonds, rings, and gold that are in new gold that's good. No problem. And there would be a police response, but no outrage from the world. So right now, these guys are hated by everybody in the world. And the heat is coming from all over the national police in France with the president of the country saying, we're going to catch these guys. I mean, that wouldn't have happened if they hit it at a jewelry store. So it's not really a smart deal to do something like that, because it's hard to fence this stuff, hard to get rid of it. And you got all the heat in the world coming down on you.
Welcome back to another episode of Cold Red. I'm Ray Carr, and with me always is Fitz. Fitz, how are you?
I'm great. We have a special episode tonight, Ray, and why don't you tell us, the audience, who's going to be our guest?
Well, we have a special guest, and not only that, but he's a very, very good friend on the show. His name is Bob Wittman. Bob is a Cold Red podcast alumni who is willing to join us to weigh in on the recent brazen international heist, where thieves successfully managed to steal over $100 million in royal jewels from the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. For new Cold Red listeners, Bob is a highly decorated former FBI special agent that specialized in art theft and art fraud. He is responsible for more than $300 million worth of stolen art and cultural property throughout a 20-year career. Bob, welcome back to the show, and thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, my friends. You guys talk about me being highly decorated. You guys are the highly decorated ones. I was just there for the ride. Yeah,
Well,
and I want to let all you people know, that's my book.
There you go.
So we got to get a little hawking
Hey,
in there, right?
you know
That's all
what?
right.
A little bit of commerce.
I don't read many books. I read that book, and I'm telling you, I couldn't put it down.
Oh, it's
I
like
read
yours.
it from cover to cover.
I
I
read
mean,
yours too.
It was unbelievable, Bobby. Unbelievable.
Well, for you, because you knew all the people, because you lived in Philly
did.
with me. Yes,
Yeah,
so we
I
knew
did. I
everybody
agree.
together. And same with Fitz. Fitz was
Yep.
around too. So,
Mm-hmm.
so good,
No.
good to see you guys.
Great
Yeah,
book, and
absolutely.
as the author of that book, you are especially the right person and the experienced person to talk about just what the heck happened in Paris Sunday morning around 9:30. And Bob, from what you know, why don't you walk the audience through what happened then, and then we'll start filling in some missing pieces and where we think maybe these jewels are right now. But
Yeah,
you started off.
Well, Fitz, I'll tell you, I woke up at 9. It was actually earlier than that, probably around 8 o'clock in the morning. And of course, France is 6 hours ahead of us. So by that time, it was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the first thing my wife said to me, she says, you know what? She had been up about a half an hour. She said there was a big heist at the Louvre. I said, what are you talking about? I said, when was that? She said, just today. So I thought, wow, so the first thing I did was go check it out. And of course, I've been there quite a few times. I've worked with the French National Police and the Parisian Police. I worked with the OCBC, which is the art theft squad there in Paris. So I looked it up, and here's what happened. 4 individuals, 4 guys, they drove a truck over to a balcony on the River Seine side of the museum, and in that truck they had a lift that had been attached to it. So basically, it was a lift truck, and they parked a ladder onto the balcony of the where the museum is. They went up there. 2 of them went up into the lift, got up onto the balcony. They broke through a window. It was like a window door, one of those large windows
Yep.
on the balcony, and then made their way into the Apollo Gallery, as it's known. And they started using angle cutters to cut through different vitrines, different cases that held the crown jewels from the Emperor Napoleon. So they ended up stealing 8 of these pieces of crown jewels, different tiaras, brooches, necklaces, extremely valuable, extremely historical. And when the alarms went off, 5 guards came to the front to try to stop them. And what they did was they held the guards off with those arc cutters. They were going to, attack them with them. So they backed off. At that point, they backed off. And this was in broad daylight with the museum open, with museum goers actually at the scene. So they were actually in the gallery looking at the famous material. So they backed them off. And then they made their getaway back down that ladder, and took off. They made their getaway on a pair of mopeds. So they got on mopeds down by the Seine River, and they rode away. They ended up getting 8 great pieces of jewelry, 8 crowns, 8 brooches, eight necklaces. They actually had a ninth, but as they pulled it out of the case, it was the crown of Eugenie, which was the wife of Napoleon III. And as they pulled it out of the case, they broke it. So when they went back down the ladder, they just dropped that on the floor, on the ground, right there by the truck and took off. So I thought, wow, what a heist. I mean, that's incredible that they would do that kind of planning where they would do the surveillance, case out that Apollo gallery. They would choose exactly which pieces they wanted because they were not the closest pieces to the entrance. They were a little bit further down in the gallery. They actually had to go a ways to get there. And I thought, what a fantastic heist. Somebody really planned this thing out. They had opeds, the arc cutters, the big saws. They had the ladder, machine that they had driven, the ladder truck, and they got all that together and went up there and did that. But then more information came out. So there was a fantastic plan here, but the execution wasn't very good, other than the fact that they got these pieces and got away, which I guess is the actual idea. But other than that, everything was a mess. They left the arc cutters. They didn't take them with them. They couldn't carry them. They left the truck there with the ladder. They left, one of them they both had yellow vests on that were construction vests, to make it look like they were workers. They were going into the museum to do work. So that's why people weren't suspicious in the beginning. One of them had the vest. He dropped his vest, took it off, and it came off of him. They left a motorcycle helmet there, a pair of gloves. Well, you guys know. You're both in the FBI. You both know. That's a tremendous trove of forensic evidence. I mean,
Absolutely.
they've got DNA from the gloves. They got DNA from the helmet. That vest had DNA on it. And then when they went through it, there was a VIN number on the truck, There was registration numbers and manufacturing information on the arc cutters. All of that is being traced as we speak. All of it's being looked at by the French police. And so, I just think that they had a great plan, but terrible execution when it comes to getting away. You guys know, if you're going to do a crime, you got to do 3 things. Do it by yourself, right? Don't leave any evidence and don't tell anybody. And if you do that, you probably won't get caught, right? Well, in this case, it was 4 guys at least. They left a ton of forensic evidence. And when it's 4 guys, they're talking to each other and they're probably talking to other people. So I think it's just a matter of time before these guys get caught. Now, whether or not they recover the stolen jewelry, which is valued today at $102 million, that's a different question. But at least as far as catching these guys, I think they're going to find them.
Your career has spanned, I don't know how many different countries, how many different cases, but it's just been enormous and what a career it was. But when you look at this case and you compare it to the other cases you worked, let's talk about it from a planning standpoint of other things that have been stolen. When you look at this plan that was put into action and others, how would you compare it?
I've seen plans like this. I mean, I had a case in Stockholm, Sweden, and it was, it occurred there. What happened that night was it was December 23rd. There was 3 guys. They went into the National Museum in Stockholm. They had machine guns. They put everybody on the floor. They went through the museum and they stole 3 paintings, 2 by Renoir, 1 by Rembrandt. And in order to make their getaway clean, what they did was they set off 2 car bombs on the main roads leading to the museum from the base of the city, because the museum's out like on a point on the water in the harbor in Stockholm. And when they set off these car bombs, of course, they blocked the streets so that respondents, policemen, and firemen couldn't get there. They couldn't get through. It took them 40 minutes to arrive. Meanwhile, they made their getaway in a high-speed boat because they had parked this boat right by the pier where the museum was. So they ran out of the museum, jumped into their boat, and took off up into the harbor. So that was a pretty good heist. I mean, the way they planned it all out, they had all that set up to go, and they took off. So again, I look at that and I say, well, there's a pretty good plan in place. Whether or not successful it was, because they got 42 million worth of paintings. But there was one glitch. When they pulled over in the boat, a fisherman saw them, a guy that was down by the water near the pier where they ran up into the city. They left the boat there, a little boat. So the next morning, when the fisherman saw this big article in their front page of the Swedish newspaper, he says, I saw a boat with 3 guys jump out. That's kind of strange. He calls the police and he gives them the whereabouts of the boat. So they go down to it and they trace the numbers and they go and talk to the guy who had was registered to the boat. So they're talking to this guy and this guy says, "No, I wasn't there last night. So I sold the boat 2 months ago." And they said, "Oh, okay, well, who did you sell it to?" And the guy said, "I had no idea. A couple of guys came in. They wanted to buy the boat. I had it advertised, so I sold it to them." So the policemen were kind of, they were kind of down about that. They're starting to walk out the door. They said, "Well, okay, we appreciate your help." And the guy calls me and said, "Well, do you want their credit card number?" They used the credit card to buy the boat. So of course they traced that. And they ended up arresting 10 people and put them all on trial. 7 of them were convicted that were involved. The other 3 were acquitted. And that's where we came in. They had recovered 2 of the remnants at that point. We came in and did an undercover operation in Copenhagen to recover the third painting, which was the $35 million Rembrandt. And of course, the 3 guys who were acquitted are the ones that we caught with the Rembrandt, and they went to jail for that. So I'm just saying, you can see where the planning was pretty good, but they never had a buyer. Ended up selling the Rembrandt to the FBI. Okay, and I saw that over and over again. Another case I did in Nice, France. 4 guys, they went into the Fine Art Museum in Nice, the Beaux-Arts Museum, and they stole 4 paintings. And they were dressed as city workers in white coveralls. And they had a white van, a city van, that they were driving in on. And when they went in, of course, everybody thought they were construction people working for the city. And of course, they ran around the museum again on the same situation at gunpoint, stole 4 paintings, ran out. 3 of them got into the van. Another guy got on a motorcycle and he took off. And the 4 of them got away. Well, we ended up doing that deal again with some leads out of Miami. We ended up doing a bust in Marseille, France, where they brought the paintings to us for $9 million. And of course, they were arrested. They had a Colt 45 in their car and a Chechen hand grenade. They thought that I was maybe a drug dealer, and they were worried about me. One of those things.
Yeah, you do have that look.
Yeah, I look just like that, don't I? Yeah. Anyway, so you can see there's similarity though. The construction worker thing, the escape on a motorcycle, all of that. It's kind of common. And I remember I was dealing with a French criminal in Marseille as well, and he told me that if anybody's an informant in any of these deals, that the way they would kill you would be to drive up next to you on a motorcycle at a red light and shoot you through the window. That's how they did their hits. So all this motorcycle stuff and moped stuff comes together. And that's what they do in Europe because of the small streets and the traffic jams. You can get away from them. So it kind of makes sense. It does match up with things I've been involved with and the types of crimes.
Bob, when we had you on a year or so ago, we talked about the Stuart Gardner Museum heist in 1990 in Boston, which is still unsolved, and I don't think it's been solved since we last talked to you. And that was actually an art theft. And I'm trying to think if they took some other item besides. I mean, it's all art, I get it, but they posed as police officers. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was 13 objects in that heist. 2 of them were not artworks. One was a Chinese beaker, and the second object, which was really interesting at the time and still is, was a finial off of a flag. Now,
right.
the finial was the golden eagle of the 1st Regiment Napoleonic Guards out of Corsica. So, in other words, Napoleon was from Corsica, and the 1st Regiment Napoleonic Guards were all based in Corsica when he was there and when he went back. At the end of his reign, he was sent back to Corsica pretty much like under guard, and that was the 1st Regiment that was there to protect him. And they had these 2 regimental flags that were in the museum. They still are. And it's the regimental flags of the 1st Napoleonic Guard. And on the top are 2 golden eagles. That's the finials on the flag, just like we have in the United States, our flag. So during the heist, they stole 11 artworks, the Chinese beaker, which was a porcelain object, and one of the eagles off of the flag, believe it or not. Why would you stop to take that off the flag? Interestingly enough, the country of France, Corsica, it belongs to France. It's going back and forth between Italy and France throughout the years. The Corsicans asked for the repatriation of the flags, and the museum refused, never gave them back. So there's some thoughts that could have been a message, that the reason this is being done is because we want, you've taken our cultural heritage, we're going to take yours. There's some thought about that. And maybe not, So the other 11 pieces were paintings. 2 of them are the most important. One is a Rembrandt seascape. It's called The Storm Over the Sea of Galilee. And it's the only seascape Rembrandt ever did. And the other painting that's so valuable is a Vermeer. There's only 35 Vermeers in the world, and this is one of the ones, and it's missing. It's the only one, and that is called The Concert. So between the two of those and the other pieces, they were valued today at about $500 million. That makes that the biggest single property crime in U.S. history. There's been bigger frauds, Ponzi schemes, Madoff, all that. In a one-act property crime, 500 million is the biggest ever, and that's from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Kind of amazing if you think about it. With this country, the biggest property shot was a museum heist. So they have never been recovered.
Bob, knowing you all these years, I've heard you say in the past, the real art of an art heist isn't the stealing, it's the selling. So given these pieces and their historical significance, how does a thief try and monetize this theft?
It's going to be difficult. I mean, there's three thoughts. The first one is the worst, and that is that these guys will try to pop the diamonds, take out the gems, melt down whatever precious metals are there, and sell it in pieces and parts. And of course, that destroys the jewelry, that destroys the history. It's going to be difficult, though, because the gems themselves, not the diamonds, but the gems, the rubies, the sapphires, the emeralds, they're tough to cut. They're hard to break down. And they're inventoried, and there's photographs of all of them, and the actual cuts are photographed. So it's going to be hard to try to sell that anywhere. Any jeweler who would be interested in buying that would be out of his mind. Okay, that's just the way it would be. Diamonds, you could probably move. There's some ways to cut diamonds, but it depends. The gold itself, the precious metals, you got to remember this stuff was mined in the early 1800s. It's not refined to the point where it's 24 karat like it is today. The reason you don't have 24 karat jewelry is because gold is too soft. So they have to add base metals like nickel and whatnot in order to make the gold 18 karat so you can wear it. Jewelry made of 24 karat gold, and especially in 1810, didn't exist. Okay. So if you melt this down, you're going to get a lot of base metals and things. It's not going to be the same as melting down a golden eagle or a Krugerrand. Different situation. It's pennies, not even penny. It's a penny on a dollar, right? So you're talking, maybe tens of thousands of dollars of value if you melt it down. But it could happen. That's the fear. That's what everybody's afraid of. The second thing is they could just sit on it. It's too hot to handle. So we stick it in a bag, put it away. That Rembrandt that I recovered in Copenhagen was gone for 5 years before we were able to do that deal. Took 5 years to get the lead to create the situation, go do the undercover. So it just gives you an idea. It could go for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And then the third way, and I've been trying to push this because I want the French government to do it, is offer a nice reward. Come out with a 100,000 euro reward, right? Why? Because that's going to lead to leads. If these guys are talking, somebody that they're telling about, a wife, a sister, a cousin that hears about it, they're going to call it in for the 100,000. Okay. Secondly, these guys might, knowing that they can't move it, it's too hot. Maybe they'll try for the reward themselves. Maybe they'll get a tip, anonymous tip through an attorney or something, and then you get it back that way. Either way, you get it back. All right. And that's the important thing.
That's the important thing. Sure.
That's the important thing. So they haven't done it yet. And I hope they do. Sometimes in the U.S. we would have done it. An insurance company would have done it immediately. But, we're talking about a government here. So sometimes there's more ego than they need, so to speak,
In your expertise, Bob, looking at these four guys that did this, and based upon other investigations you've been involved in, where there's been a lot more than the actual actors that did the robbery, do you think this is a group of individuals, or do you think it's kind of succinct to those four?
No, I think there's more people involved. I mean, like I said, that deal in Stockholm had 10 people that planned it, conspired to do it. Only 3 people went in, but there were 10 people involved. So I think you're going to have more people in this because somebody had to pick up the ladder truck. Somebody had to buy the arc cutters. I mean, this all had to come together, and I don't think one guy did it all. I'm sure there was more people involved who know about it. They might not have done anything, but they're going to be co-conspirators because they had the knowledge.
Yeah, and whenever I talk to people, even for petty crimes, the person on the street that in the subway that takes your cell phone, he's not the one doing anything with it to make money. He has someone to give that to for $50, and he's out of there ripping off someone else's cell phone. We had a guy on the other night from NYPD, retired, car theft expert. The thieves aren't the ones that are, putting everything together, facilitating these cars to go overseas to China or wherever. They're just doing their job, the thieves, to get the car itself. The same with these particular guys here. There may be one brain among the four of them, quote unquote, but there are some other people, no likely involved. Every sort of theft ring, has people, fences, and of course people even above that they go to. I doubt if these people pulled this theft, this heist, and had like nowhere to take these things right away. I mean, you're right. It may sit on it for a while, but they have some ideas where this thing is going to go. And I think you're right too, Bob. And as investigators, we all know this. Someone down the line is going to talk. Will it be in a week, a month, a year? Someone's going to get upset. One of the other three guys pissed off the fourth guy, and or all three of them pissed off the fourth guy, and someone's going to get locked up for something else, and they're facing some time. Their kid gets locked up, facing time. Hey, can you help me out here, gendarme? And I will, I'll give you some good information. So, and I'll just go back to the very beginning. This was a success so far, but in a way, and they made some mistakes, but it's so simple. And obviously they did surveillance work beforehand. Who knows if they've had other people get these trucks, the ladder trucks, the bucket trucks, I think they called it. But it was actually so simple in design. You're thinking of these Tom Cruise scenes where he's lowered down through the lasers in the middle of the night. These are like the smash and grabs you see in Beverly Hills or up in Manhattan. A band of 10 kids basically run into a store, hammers, grab everything, get out. It's a little bit more sophisticated, but it's not too different in this case. Now, where their skill comes in Paris, they have to then know where to take this stuff. And again, they may be sitting on it for a while, or they have somewhere to take it right away. Time will tell on that. But sophisticated, yes, but in its own simplicity, made it even more simplistic in that regard.
Jim, I agree. I really think that based upon the sloppiness that they showed in this crime scene, it's indicative of youthfulness. There's disorganization. I think these were not, expert jewel thieves. I think just like Jim said, they were just very similar to the smash and grabs that happened in Philly, Bob, or happened out in.
Yeah. Oh, it was a smash and grab. I think there's a little bit of stupidity in doing it at the Louvre. I mean, look, if they're going out and hit a Harry Winston jewelry store, nobody care. You see what I'm saying? Much easier, a lot of interesting, good stuff that you could get, that you could sell, Rolex watches, diamonds, rings, and gold that are in new gold. That's good. No problem. And there would be a police response, but no outrage from the world. So right now, these guys are hated by everybody in the world. And the heat is coming from all over the national police in France, with the president of the country saying, we're going to catch these guys. I mean, that wouldn't have happened if they hit it at a jewelry store. So it's not really a smart deal to do something like that, because it's hard to fence this stuff, hard to get rid of it. And you got all the heat in the world coming down on you.
But, I would be shocked if, in fact, this is the first time these guys did something like this. So based upon what you're saying, maybe go back and look at some of those smaller jewelry heists, and maybe that's your starting point. Because, I mean, look, you don't just, that's the big leagues. What they did is the big leagues. Maybe they didn't do it like a big leaguer would. They weren't professional, but they entered the big leagues, professional players, but they had to start somewhere, and they weren't really doing a great job, even maybe early on. Maybe some of the same things that happened there on Sunday happen in some of these other jobs that may kind of give a key into the MO of who these guys are.
Yeah. There's been a series of gold heists in Europe in the past, this year. The same thing happened in the Netherlands. There was an exhibition of Romanian crowns, from 1,000 years old, that these are golden crowns and helmets. And they went in and stole those, and stole the gold. In Dresden, they stole 100 kilos of gold a few years back and hit the museum in Dresden. Last month in Paris, a group hit the Natural History Museum and stole gold nuggets, about $1 million worth out of the Natural History Museum right there in Paris. So there's been a rash of these hits. The one in the Natural History Museum, that intrigued me, because I think they used cutters in that one too. But they just arrested a woman, a Chinese woman, who was trying to sell some of the gold in Spain that had been melted down. It was golden nuggets. And she was trying to sell it, and she got caught. So it might be a little, well, she might have been one of the ones that were involved in the conspiracy to put this one together as well. But the fact that they did it last month and then hit it again within a month, it was September 17th, and this was October 19th. So it makes sense, that these are the same people.
How do you see it with let's talk about the Louvre itself. I've only been on the outskirts of it, never went inside. Far recesses of my brain, I would never think of. I'm not a thief, but of all places in the world, why go to Fort Knox to get money? You were saying that kind of earlier,
Exactly.
and that's kind of the Fort Knox of the art world, if you will. The security director, I think, has only been in charge about a year. I think the union was complaining about some issues. Will her head roll? I mean, will she be the face of this failure? I can't imagine her keeping that job. But anything you would add to that whole thing, the personnel matter there and security
Yeah.
itself?
Well, the fact that she's only been there a year, I think they're going to have to give her a little bit of grace on that because, it's a huge museum. Now, first of all, the alarm did go off and 5 guards did respond. Okay. So the security did what it's supposed to do. It worked, right? The thing is that people have asked me, well, why didn't the guards, jump on these guys? Why didn't they attack them and, capture them and stop them? Well, because they were threatened with these arc cutters, these blades, and the guards are unarmed. So that's the first thing. The second thing, museum guards in Europe are not trained to jump on people and attack them, you know? And I always say to people who ask me this, look, would you rather have them get some property or have to kill 3 people? I mean, what would you rather see happen, right? Life is always more important than property. And I don't care what the property is. Life is more important. So they did what they're supposed to do. The actual security worked. A lot of people are complaining. They're saying it didn't, but in the end, if you have a group of people who are hell bent to leather to go do a robbery, they're going to do it. And if they're willing to get caught and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get away, they probably will, because nobody's going to be able to stop them, unless you're armed and shooting it out with them. That's a different story. But at that point, if you're a museum guard, that's not what you're there for. Most museum guards are there for deterrent and to help the museum visitors. It's about the visitor.
Of proactive purposes, not reactive.
No, but museum visitor experience, to tell people which gallery to go into to see which artwork. That's the type of thing that they do. And so attacking people is not it. There was the director of the museum had to appear before the French Senate, and she was apologizing and saying some things. One of the things she said that everybody jumped on was that the camera was pointed in the wrong direction. And she said the camera wasn't pointing at the window. Well, why would you point a camera at a window? You point it at the artifacts, because that's where you're looking to stop people from attacking the artifacts. So the thing that I got that kind of not upset, but got me wondering, the word wrong was the wrong word to use. She should have said, we only had one camera and it didn't capture the window. See, it's not wrong. It's just, it didn't capture the window. But everybody jumping on that said, oh, they did the wrong thing. No, you wouldn't put a camera at a window. You would point it at the artifacts. And that's what they did. What they needed was 2 cameras.
Well, or more. Sure. Which you can put around your house for $150 a day. You get a half dozen decent cameras. And I mean, obviously,
but
more upscale for a museum. I get it.
Yeah, but also you got to have Wi-Fi. I mean, that's another problem in those museums in Europe. Those buildings were built for palaces, and they were built hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Thick walls, very hard to get good Wi-Fi coverage in those kinds of buildings compared to, say, today, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Philadelphia Museum. They're all fairly newly built, so you have that ability. Everything's built in to begin with. Back then, 500 years ago, it was a different story as far as the type of surveillance, type of Wi-Fi you could use. Of course, more cameras would have been better, but here's the problem with museums. Nobody wants to donate money for security. Everybody wants to donate money for paintings, for exhibitions, because they get their name on there. It's sexy, it's ego. But nobody wants to put their name on a camera,
Yeah, but you know what, Bob, when you think about it, and they are kind of right. The camera system and the surveillance systems are both outdated.
Yeah.
Why not have a camera? It doesn't cost much. That gives you 360 coverage.
Right. Yeah.
There's cameras that can do that.
Yeah, of course. Put a round camera, eye camera, top, put a 360 coverage.
Right.
Because they're like $700. As a regular single camera, it's like about 200.
Right.
That's not her fault. that's the
No, but
government
she
of
did
France.
make a great suggestion. She said, look, and as Jim kind of said, you have Fort Knox here. You have the top of the line place. Why isn't there a substation, a police substation? And she made a recommendation about a police substation. That's a great deterrent.
Yeah, yeah. Well, everything we're talking about is deterrence, right? It's not going to stop, a determined robber who's willing to give it up, do whatever he's got to do to get in there. Do you see what I'm saying? If
I
that's
do.
the case, it's going to be very difficult. It's like a bank robber who's willing to take it, willing to be killed to rob the bank. He's going to get in. He's going to do what he's got to do.
Well,
And
I've
remember,
been,
the museum was open. It's not like it was closed.
and that's exactly where I was going with my next question. And I've been debating this in the last few days. This wasn't really a robbery. It wasn't really a burglary. It was a theft. You can use heist. I don't think that's really a legal term. And I'm thinking of U.S. laws. And I know when it comes to antiquities and governmental property, there's other laws that kick in and statutes. A robbery is using force to get something from someone. Burglary is breaking into a structure that's not legally yours.
But it was a robbery because they threatened the guards with
Well, on
the
the way out, they
art
did,
guns.
yes.
Yeah. So when you
So
use
you could, but they didn't use the robbery method to actually steal the items, but they did after the
no,
fact to
so it's
push them away. So I get
force
it,
force or intimidation.
and that's not even that important. I was just trying in my head figure out, how they even put this whole thing together, and you wonder if they were carrying guns with them, but if they were, they certainly didn't choose to use them to get away. And it's going to be interesting too. Maybe one camera or more, and we'll see what their recording system is like. You know for fact that someone was in that room every day, probably Sunday mornings. They may have been there every day of the week over the last 3 months. And they figured Sunday mornings, 9:30, and they're looking at outside, other construction work going on. Maybe it's a police shift, turnover around that time. And they somehow chose that Sunday morning at 9:30 for reasons. I'm hoping, even if it's only one camera in the room, I'm hoping there's a recording mechanism to it, and they can go back months. It's not going to be that easy. People could have disguises and COVID masks and all that stuff, but at least look for some people spending a little bit more unusual time in that particular room. Just like a good bank robber, and Ray certainly knows about them, and me too. They most of them surveilled the bank before, even just a day or so. Some more sophisticated than others. So there's no doubt part of this crew was in there in advance. The question is, can the evidence be determined to exactly determine when that was and who it was?
Yeah, yeah. The generally speaking, those the museum, they're only good for about 30 days. That's what the cameras usually hold up to. But yeah, you're right. I'm sure they're looking at it. You have to understand that in Paris, and I've worked with these guys. They have what they call the BRB, and that's the Brigade Against Bandits. Basically, it's a French term, but that's what it translates to. And that's a specialized brigade there in the Parisian police that do nothing but these types of cases. And they're the best of the best. I mean, they're the guys who do the armed robberies, all that sort of thing. So what I like about it too is I know that they have a fantastic informant network. Yeah, they know people in Paris who are in the underground and the criminals and whatnot. So they're going to be listening to all their people. And they all the hip pocket informants out there. Throw a guy 25 euros and he goes out and gets some information for you. It's those kind of guys. So I'm thinking they're going to be on this pretty quickly, if not already heavily into it.
And those same informants are being told, "You want a deal? Give us the art thieves,
Yeah.
and we'll get you out. Your son, your wife, whoever. We'll work a deal with the prosecutor, drop your charges." And so whether it's money, the reward you talked about earlier that the government puts out, but yeah, an informant probably will be the one, whether it's one of the 4 or 8 or 10 involved in this case, or a friend of theirs, girlfriend, whatever. Someone will come forward and they'll have a reason. Could be
Oh
a
yeah.
could be a jilted lover. It's been known to happen.
Could be anything. Yeah,
And
you're
she
right.
wants one of those diamonds or else.
That's the deal.
Yes.
Bobby, I want to ask you this, and looking at this case versus all the other cases you've been involved in, what do you think is the single most important piece of advice that you could give to the investigators that are working this case right now?
Put out a reward offer.
Yeah, you said that early on.
Yeah, do it. Do it
I
right
like
away.
that. I like it.
Because you put that out, and that creates interest. And the people who are going to be interested in that are not, not your rich people, not the people who are legitimate people. It's the criminal element. They're the guys that
I
want,
agree.
they hear 100,000 euro. that's big bucks, you know, and
Yeah,
they're going to be
it
out
is.
there searching for it. You know, they're actually going to work to get it. So that's what you do. You put that out right away. And the way you word it, you say, you know, 100,000 euro for anyone that gives them, the way you say it's up to 100,000 euro for information leading to the recovery, not the prosecution, not the arrest, the recovery of these pieces. And then you put out you know, a regular phone number and hopefully have the number not go back to the police. Have it come to some type of outside board. So it's not the police. And of course, you're going to give the information to the police. That's what we used to do here in Philly. But you know, you put the number out and you always say up to, because you might have 5 people come in and give you good information about different, you know, phases. So they have to split it to 20,000 each. So you have to kind of give yourself a little wiggle room, you know, when you write that, because that's basically a contract when you put that out.
Well, Bob, let's hope that the people listen to this that are working this case and listen to you.
I don't think they're going to be, I don't think they listen to us.
No, I know. I know that. I'm aware.
Yeah.
But I said, let's hope.
So, yeah.
And parlez-vous français? If you're one of our thieves, one of the thieves listening to Cold Red,
Give us a
first of
call.
all, thank you. Like and subscribe. However, then give us a call, and we'll put a good word out for you. But no, in all seriousness, I'm glad no one was hurt, and I hope no one gets hurt out of this. And you know, no machine guns were pulled, like in I think you said Stockholm. I know there's been some other thefts or heists such as that, but yeah, this is. I was thinking of the reward thing. It took the FBI 5 years to put out a $500,000 reward for the January 5th or 6th, it's not clear now, alleged bomber. Still an unsolved case and a really weird one. I've commented on that in the past. So, yeah, $500,000 for that, 100,000 euros. What's that, about 150 grand, give or take?
Yeah, 130. Yeah.
In that ballpark. So, and if that doesn't work, then you up the amount a little bit there. There may be benefactors even willing to put money up for that, you know, private people. I think that is an excellent idea. Rewards don't always work in like homicide cases, things like that, but something as big with a national aspect to it, such as this, I think it would have a good chance. Yeah, no doubt they're working 24/7 right now, and all kinds of favors are being asked, and leads followed through, and fingerprints, DNA, serial numbers, VINs on trucks, whatever, and let's hope one of those things comes through. But Bob, as always, you're a wealth of information here, and yeah, we have Napoleon's kind of a common theme between the Stuart Gardner Museum theft and this one now. So pretty sure he's ruled out as a suspect. However.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting how that all, his possessions, his former jewelry and crowns and things like that, and of his wife, I still have that kind of value all these years. Ray, a few other things here to take us out, then I'll take us out officially.
No, Bob, I want to thank you for agreeing to join us on such short notice and sharing your knowledge with our audience and with us, and hopefully with the people in France. Hopefully this it does reach over there, Bob. We do have some subscribers over there, so hopefully they get this word out. If we get a call from one of the guys involved, we'll bring you on and we'll cover his face. We'll cover your face. We'll disguise your voice, and you can just talk to us, right? We've done that before.
Hey, we just did it with Keith, the neo-Nazi, so we can do it for you.
Hey, listen. So if
person.
you got people in France, tell them priceless is in French.
There you go.
So they can pick it out.
There you go.
It's French.
Bob, we have some Arapaho-speaking Native Americans. Why don't you pull that book out?
Let's see.
Oh my God, I was kidding. If you have a book in Arapaho, you've made it.
This is Korean, but it could be.
All right, close enough.
All right, that's close enough, Bob. That's close. Yeah, but you get all those books in all those different languages. Unbelievable.
Well,
so listen, guys,
Bob.
I'm happy to be with you guys. You know, you're my compadres. We worked together for years and years. And hey, anything I can do for you guys, let me know. You know, anytime.
You're the best, Bobby, as always.
Yeah. No, you guys are the best.
Well, we appreciate that. And folks, our audience, you're our best too. And we enjoy when you tune in for us. Keep liking, subscribing to Cold Red. Check out coldredpodcast.com. And we have a few announcements coming up. Remember, my fourth book is out there, A Journey to the Center of the Mind, Book 4. We have some giveaways going on. Check out the website. I said like and subscribe. Thanks to our producers, Matt Robinson, Matt McLaughlin, our music coordinator, Rick Schilling. And for everyone out there, thanks again for listening or watching, and see you next time on Cold Red. Good night, folks.